Ferchuk, and I am the co-franchisee of the Arthur Murray Dance Studio in Coquitlam, British Columbia, Canada. On today's edition of Arthur Murray's Footsteps, we're going to be talking about some different types of turns and how you can be practicing them on your own. The first one we're going to be doing is called a pivot brush. We're also going to be talking about switch turns and how you can adapt all of that into a practice with your walk-around turns. So first of all, the pivot brush. Now when we do a pivot brush is a turn where we're going to take a step and we're actually going to turn in the direction of the leg that we're standing on. So if we were taking a step, we're now going to turn in that same direction. And similarly, if we took a step with the other leg, we turn in that direction. So we're always going to be turning in the direction of the standing leg. So if we did that, turning a quarter. So we can start by stepping and turning a quarter. Stepping, turning a quarter. Stepping, turning a quarter. And stepping, turning a quarter. Now if we did that going sideways, we're going to step, turn quarter, step, turn quarter, step, turn a quarter. Now if I face the other direction, we can do that together. Step and turn a quarter, step, turn a quarter, step and turn a quarter, step and turn a quarter. And that's a very good practice. Now we can take and also add a little bit of turn. So once the quarter turn feels quite comfortable and you feel that you're able to step, to turn, to feel like you really have the weight on that foot, that you're not stepping onto the other foot, that you're really nicely balanced and vertical, then we can graduate to a little bit of a more advanced version, which is to do half turns. So in the half turns, again, same idea, we're going to take a step, and then now we're going to turn the same direction, but we're going to turn a half this time. So we turn a half. And then we step, and then now, similarly, we turn a half. So to give you a sideways view of that, we would step and then we turn a half. And we step and turn a half. Step, turn a half, step, turn a half. Excellent. And so that's quite a bit of turn. So that gets a little bit challenging, but it is an excellent way to practice the pivot brush. Now, sometimes when we need to do a pivot brush in dancing, whether we're doing half turns or quarter turns, is sometimes rather than doing a forward step, we need to do it from a side step. So I think that what we'll do now is to practice it from a side step. So if you step to the side, and then now if we turn a half, and then now we step to the side and we turn a half. It's going to feel a little bit different. So even though it's the same thing, the counterbalance in your body is different and needs to be developed. When you're stepping to the side, it feels different than when it's stepping forward. In the forward, you'll feel a little bit more torque naturally. And so when you step to the side, you need to be able to find that. So if you're finding that when you try to the side, it's a little bit harder, that's natural. So just want to try and make sure that the stepping forward felt good first, and then we can try to move into the side. Once I've talked to you about the pivot brush and the switch turn, I'm going to come back to them and talk a little bit more about what articulation in the body that you can use if you are a little bit more advanced that will also make those turns a little bit more dynamic. So that was the pivot brush. So again, the pivot brush was stepping and then turning in the direction of the leg that you're standing on. Now we also have the switch turns. And so now in switch turns, what we're going to do is the opposite. So we're going to step on a leg and then we're going to turn away from that leg. So rather than turning towards that leg, we're going to turn away from it. And then we're going to take a step, and again, same thing. We're going to turn away from it. So we're taking a step and then turning away. So here we were doing, just like we did with the pivot brushes, we were doing quarter turns. So if we did that again, we would take a step, turn away from the foot, a step, turn away away from the foot, but again, maintaining the weight on that foot. Step, our weight's on that one, it stays there. Our weight's on it, and now it stays there during our rotation. We step on it, and we turn. So if we did that facing the same way, we're going to step and turn a quarter, step, turn a quarter, step, turn a quarter. So we've got our quarter turns. Now, just as we did with the pivot brushes, we can also now do half turns, which is probably what, for the switch turn, you're probably going to be using the half turns a lot more. So in that one, what we're going to do is we're going to step and turn a half. And then step and turn a half. Now, when we turn this much, it's really important that we are watching the tracking of our feet. And so when we do a switch turn, we need to make sure that when we take the step before we turn, we don't start turning. Sometimes we start to, I know which direction I'm going to turn. So you really have to resist, use your willpower to make sure that when you step, you're not starting your rotation yet. So here we are stepping on one track. Now what that does is that when we do our half turn, is that now we have two tracks now to move through. If we step on two tracks to start with, now when we do our full half turn, we're all twisted up. And so now we don't have the ability to step through. So we'll have a problem there. So whenever we do a switch turn that's turning a half, we need to make sure that we've got that idea that we're going on from one track, which allows us after the rotation to be on two tracks, which is going to allow us to move much more efficiently. So if we step on one track, and then keeping the weight on that foot, we turn our half. And then now we could, if we were going to do it right away, we would need to move that foot so it's on one track and then turn. Again, we can also do this with some walks in between, which tends to be quite nice. So if we did a couple of walks first, so we did walk, walk, and then now we went on to one track and turn. And now we can do our walk, walk. So we go walk, walk, and then we did one track and turn. Walk, walk, one track, turn, walk, walk, one track, turn. And now we can do that on from a side view. And we would have walk, walk, one track, turn, walk, walk, one track, turn, walk, walk, one track, turn, walk, walk, one track, turn. And that could be a very nice practice that you can do, and it will lead, for those of you that have done spirals before, it'll lead into that as well. So the switch turn will be a great practice and a great beginning for being able to work on your spirals. Now, I mentioned earlier that when I'm finished talking about those two different types of turns, that we were going to talk a little bit about some more advanced movements that we can do with that. So one of the things as you get into turning more and more is that you want to make sure that your body is not moving all as one piece. So whenever we do a turn, we're not going to be actually turning everything equally. We always want to have articulation and torque. When we do the pivot brush, what we want to do is if we can imagine that you've got your shoulders, and you've got like a line from your arms and your shoulders. It's one long line. And that piece is going to try, if it can, to move first. So when you step, you're going to take that part and turn it first without the rest going. So we're not taking everything. We're just going to take that shoulders first. And then now, when we get to the end, you won't be able to go too long. Then we turn and the rest turns. We kind of have a little bit of a twist. Then again, same thing. We're going to step. Our shoulders are going to go until they can't go anymore. And then we twist. So we go step, then we have our shoulders, and then everything else. Step, and then our shoulders go, and twist. And this will work also with the quarter turns, and we'll make them a lot more dynamic. So if you step, and you're going to do a quarter turn. You can still shoulders, hips, and hips, right? So you're going to find that you still have that nice torque and twist and separation in the body. So it should be in the quarter turn one as well. You're going to notice the biggest difference probably when you try and do the half turn, in that when you get that twist, it's going to feel a lot more balanced, a lot more efficient, and dynamic. So the same thing we can apply to our switch turns. Now it feels a little bit different in the switch turns because you're turning away from the standing leg. So it's a little bit harder to create that torque in a switch turn, but it's still going to be the same type of thing. So when you step on one leg, and you're going to be turning away from that leg. So now here, without allowing anything else to turn, you're going to turn just the shoulders. And then now when you can't go any further, twist the other direction. So the thing that tends to happen, and you need to really be careful, and you know, if you're fairly new to switch turns, don't worry about this part of it too much, because this is a bit more advanced. But when you're stepping here, what tends to happen to everybody is that we start to turn early, or we sometimes even toe in the foot. So we want to make sure, that's why I said don't turn too early. But here, when you turn your shoulders, it's really important that you don't turn your hips. So that you're here and your shoulder is turning, that hip's not giving in. So you're turning the shoulder, but that hip is staying, and then you twist. So then if we had our walk, here we step. Then we're going to take the shoulders and then twist. So if we had walk, step, we have shoulders, twist. Walk, step, shoulders, twist. Walk, step, take your shoulders, twist. Walk, step, take your shoulders, and twist. So that's going to create a lot more activity in your back. It's going to give you a lot more balance, a lot more of a dynamic, efficient movement. So that's articulating the body within those turns. Depending on how much you've done switch turns and how long you've been working on pivot brushes, that will depend on whether or not you should be thinking about that. If you're fairly new to them, make sure that you just think about staying on that leg and staying vertical, making sure that the weight doesn't transfer. If that's very comfortable for you and you've been doing it a long time, then start to think a little bit about the articulation of the body and seeing about getting that little bit of torque in there. Now, when we do the pivot brushes and we do the switch turns, we do these different things, there are certainly places in your dancing where you're going to be using them. And one good place to practice is your walk around turns. Now, when we do a walk around turn, we are definitely doing a switch turn. So if we were to do something like we would do maybe in a chase or something like that, we have a forward step, right? And we're going on one track. And now we're going to turn a half and then step. And if we were doing like a chase, we could do our cha-cha one. And then we would have our forward step. And then we would do our switch turn, step, and then we could have like our cha-cha one. So we could have step, switch turn, step, cha-cha one, and then we could have step, switch turn, step, cha-cha one. Now there I was doing the progressive movement in the chasse. If you're doing lockstep or whatever kind of chasse that you've been working on, doesn't matter. The thing is that we're talking about is the walk around turns on the two ends that we're really working on. So there we're just applying the switch turn to the walk around turn. So as you start to take this technique into your walk around turns, you probably want to start with that. So you're just adding one piece, because a walk around turn does not exist without having that switch turn component. So let's do it facing the same way. So we'll just start with a walk around turn. We're going to start with forward, switch turn, forward, and then we have our cha-cha one, and then with the other leg we're going to go forward, switch turn, forward, cha, cha, one. Okay, a little further away. Forward, switch turn, forward, cha, cha, one, and then forward, switch turn, forward, cha, cha, one. Excellent. Now I'm going to do that sideways so you can see it. So we're going to do forward, switch turn, forward, cha, cha, one, forward, switch turn, forward, cha, cha, one, forward, switch turn, make sure the weight's still on that foot, forward, cha, cha, one, and forward, switch turn, forward, cha, cha, one. So that's applying the switch turn to the chase. Now, if we think about it though, often when we do an underarm turn or when we do, crossover breaks, whether it be in Rumba, Cha-Cha, doesn't really matter. We've now got to add a little bit of extra turn in there. So if we were to practice, say, walk around turns, we are going to practice on both sides, and we're going to add now the pivot brush to that. So if we were here, I'll do it facing the same way as you. So if we were to step to the side, I think a little bit bigger step there, so side. Here we're going to add a pivot brush. So again, we have to pivot brush our quarter turn pivot brush from a side step. Then we're going to step on one track, and so now here is our switch turn. And now we're going to step forward, and now we do a pivot brush back to where we started. If we're doing it if we're practicing this in Rumba, we would just take it one step. If you're practicing it in Cha-Cha, you would have Cha-Cha one. So whichever one you want to do is excellent. So now here we're going to have pivot brush. We have one track here. Don't turn yet. Then switch turn. And then step. Pivot brush. And then back to our side step or our chassé. So let's do one set in Rumba. And then we'll do one set in Cha-Cha, just so you can see how to apply for both of those. So if we're here, we're going to do in Rumba first. So we would have our side step. We would do our pivot brush. We have our walk, again in one track. Switch turn, forward, pivot brush, side step. Then we have pivot brush, step, switch turn, step, pivot brush, slow. So we have slow and quick and quick and slow and quick and quick and slow. So that would be if we applied it into the Rumba as a practice tool. We can also do it in Cha-Cha. So we would have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. So those are two good ways to be able to practice it. Make sure when you're practicing your walk around turns, if you do the chase, you're practicing both directions. And again, in your walk around turns, if we add it with the turn on the right and turn on the left, it's going to make a big difference. So you want to make sure you can only turn one direction. That's important for both leaders and followers, that we can make sure that we're somewhat even on both sides and able to turn both directions. So today's topic was pivot brush and switch turns and how they apply also into the walk around turns. So I hope that you practice that, and as Catherine Murray would have said, put a little fun in your life, keep dancing. Thank you.